In this video, I'm going to outline and show you every single dollar that I've spent and will spend on my upcoming debut headline Australia tour, which starts just a little over 2 weeks from now. If you watched my previous video talking about my entire musical journey and how we even got to this point in the first place, this video will provide more context as to why this tour is the biggest risk that I've ever taken in my life, both financially and creatively. And hopefully it gives you guys an idea of what small to mid-sized bands go through just to play in your city. I'm gonna get the hard numbers and figures out, but first, let's lay out some context for the spending habits of this tour. Since this is our first headline tour, I wanted to do it properly and make sure that we not only accounted for everything, but also planned everything as professionally as we could. And I will explain my decision-making process and the justifications for the money that was spent as we go on throughout the video. Because I have no doubt that there will be comments saying, well, if you drove 10 hours a day, slept on the floor and ate like shit, you wouldn't be spending as much. Obviously. And there's very good reasons as to why that's not a good idea, even without the consideration of it just being money spent. Before I go on, I know that not all of you will make it to the end of this video, so if you are in Australia and you're keen on coming to see some of the shows, ticket links are now available both down in the description and in the pinned comment below. We'll be kicking off the tour on Friday the 13th of June in Brisbane, June the 14th on the Saturday in Sydney, and June the 15th on the Sunday in Melbourne. There's VIP tickets where you have the chance to win a 7-string Jackson Surfcaster unreleased guitar. There's also pre-show masterclasses before every show and so much more. Given what you're about to see in this video, I'm honestly not sure if I will ever get to do this again, so I hope I get to see you guys there. Let's start by talking about the touring members and crew. I have my bandmates Keyan and Steven, who have been playing with me since we first started. And for crew, we're also bringing our usual front of house Chris, who's also taking on some TM and PM roles for this tour managing and production manager as well. Chris has been with us for years now, and I basically view him as the 4th member of the band. Whether we spend well or spend nothing, he is a non-negotiable in our makeup as a live act. We're traveling with a dedicated lighting director for the first time, Lockie, who has programmed and built the diamonds that you might have seen around in other videos. There's also Brad, our stage tech, who is also a much needed helping hand on odd jobs like helping with setting up the kit, loading in, packing up, driving the gear around, dealing with grumpy airport staff, things like that. So the band and I don't really need to think about it at all, you know, giving us more time and mental energy to focus on what we're actually there to do. Every time we play a show, whether that be interstate like we're doing with these ones, or even at home, we aim to hire a photographer to capture the show for us in each city. But for the first time, we decided to bring our photographer Daniel with us and fly him with us to keep all of it in-house and for the photos and footage to feel cohesive. Bringing Daniel with us allowed us to have extra luggage allowance as well, which allows us to fly Steven's entire drum kit with him. This eliminated the process of needing to, you know, hire and pick up a kit in every city, which would have cost more actually than just bringing Daniel along with us and flying the extra luggage. So lumping in everyone's rates together as one figure, this ends up being around $6,000 for the entire touring party. Then there's the cost of covering everyone's travel, including my own. We are flying this tour, we are not driving. And the routing of this tour was purposely planned around saving as much money as possible, which is why we're flying up to Brisbane, flying down to Sydney, down to Melbourne, and then down all the way back in the same direction for the last night when we go back home to Adelaide. Australia is a bit different to the US and Europe. You know, tour buses don't really exist here. Every major city is at least 1.5 hour flight or 9 to 10 hour drive away. Could we save more money by waking up at the crack of dawn every day and driving to each city, practically arriving to the venues at load-in? Sure. But what we'd gain in money, we'd lose in sleep and morale. Fatigue is the silent killer on tours, and it also results in weaker immune systems and people just getting sick easier. After having done shows with, you know, early drives, waking up at 5 a.m. after falling asleep at 1 a.m. after the show, I've learned that it's actually not worth it, but it's also dangerous. Even when flying, I've also realized that sometimes, you know, spending the extra $20 for a flight that's 1 hour later adds up over 3, 4, 5 days of straight shows. That extra hour of rest every day really does make all the difference on the road. So in summary, for this debut headline tour, I decided that I'd rather spend just a little bit more so that everyone is much more comfortable. Because after all the past experiences, I now know that it's directly correlated towards putting on better shows every single night. Flight travel is usually the financial killer when it comes to touring, especially in Australia where flight prices seem to be just getting worse and worse and worse. Shout out to the Australian viewers. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. Thankfully, we were ahead of the curve for this tour. My drummer Steven and I got pretty savvy with some frequent flyer credit card deals, where if you sign up and spend X amount of money in a certain amount of time, you'd get, say, like 60,000 flyer points. And we anticipated the possibility of a headline tour months ago, so we signed up for these cards way earlier in the year. Even past tours like the unprocessed one that we did in February, we'd book Virgin flights with those Virgin credit cards, which resulted in even more bonus points stacking up. Velocity points didn't cover everyone's flights for this tour, but it did help a lot. We ended up spending just over $1,000 on flights for everyone across the entire tour, which is crazy because that could have easily been $7,000 to $8,000 for the 7 of us in total if we weren't spending it on points. Next up is accommodation. So with this many people, I wanted everyone to be comfortable while not breaking the bank. And you know, this touring crew has known each other for years now, and we don't really mind sharing spaces and being intimate. Could I have saved money by, you know, asking for favors, cramming everyone in a friend's house in each city every night? You know, all sharing one toilet and one shower. Sure, but that's a big burden on our friends, and no one in the touring party would get any personal space across those days. Everyone would be sharing one toilet and one shower, which means longer nights, earlier wake-ups, and less sleep. Again, you can see how when you take a broader look into tour logistics and not think of it as just black and white numbers and how much you can save, it becomes easy to see how things can go wrong on a tour, what's worth it and what's not. So for accommodation, I booked massive Airbnbs for one night in each city, fit with at least 6 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms from memory. And because the last stop is in Melbourne, half of our crew live there and could just go home that night, which helps with the cost of accommodation for that last night before we go back home. Including a rehearsal/travel day in Brisbane before the tour starts, accommodation ended up at just over $1,700. Next is transport. How are we getting from the airport to the accommodation, and how are we getting to the venue back to accommodation back to the airport in the morning? Since we're flying out all of our gear, we've hired a gear van that's purely there just to move the gear around, and an additional people mover van to carry us since there's 7 of us. This turns out way cheaper than just getting Ubers and maxi taxis everywhere, especially on a headlining run like this one. And altogether, this ended up being at just over $1,200. So about $300 a day over 4 days. We need to make new merch for this tour as well. So completely new designs for both t-shirts and jumpers, as well as other little bits and pieces like, you know, custom guitar picks that you can grab at the merch desk, as well as like these little pendants that you can wear on your belt, wear as a necklace, just something different. I wanted to experiment with merch because I was sick of having just t-shirts and jumpers. There's nothing that I hate more than cheap merch shirts that I know cost literally $5 to make, where you pay sometimes upwards of $50 for them at a show, and then after 3 washes, they fade and then they just start falling apart. I would rather spend a little more on the quality of our merch so that it lasts and that people are actually proud to wear it for longer. Without going on too much of a tangent about like branding and perception and stuff like that, I don't want my brand associated with cheap garments. I want it to feel premium. And after seeing how many of you guys come back and get more merch after experiencing the quality of the first one that you got, I think that it speaks for itself. I also want the designs to be like something that I could wear casually going out with my non-music friends, if you get what I mean, or even semi-formally at events. I'm not a big fan of like the typical metal shirt with like the loudest design ever of like a snake going through a skull's eyes or something like that. That's just not my vibe at all. So right now I'm in talks with the merch distributor in Australia, and the quotes that I've been getting are sitting at just over $2,000 for over 100 pieces of merch for this tour. Then there's the venue fees. So how much they take per ticket and any additional costs for things like early load-in, extra security for the masterclasses that are happening before the shows and stuff like that. Since most load-ins start at 4 p.m, it will be a very tight fit to soundcheck 3 bands and have the masterclass happen an hour before doors. So we've got early load-ins happening every single day, and it also helps us with the peace of mind as well. I'd rather have more time to make sure that everything is working, and you know, just in case something does go wrong in the lead up to the show, there should be enough time to fix it. Every venue's fees are different, but thankfully they're not too bad on this run that we're doing. Even when underestimating ticket sales, the venue costs amounted to somewhere around $1,500 just to play in the 3 venues. Then there's the more business related expenses. So things like booking agent fees, the guarantees for each of the supports every single night, and over $1,000 just on the marketing expenses. Things like email list pushes, running Facebook ads, which some of you may have seen if you're in Australia. You might have seen an ad pop up on Instagram or Facebook promoting the shows. Pretty much anything that just lets people know that these shows are happening, that is a cost as well. This all typically depends on how many people come to the shows, and you know, after running numbers, the minimum spend will probably be around somewhere like $4,500, all in for all of those things that I just mentioned. Lastly, there's the miscellaneous spend, things that we need to tour and things that fly under the radar of expenses over the months leading up to the tour if you're not careful. Things like this $600 drum hardware case that I had to buy for our lights. Things like how now we've switched to Ableton and we're needing to buy licenses and run it on multiple laptops during the show for redundancy. New strings, making the signed posters for VIP, the cost of making our AAA passes. We had to fix a couple power looms for our pedal boards that had wear and tear over the past couple tours. On the road, we'll have to pay for petrol for the hire cars and make sure that they're full because that's part of the legislation when you sign it and bring it back to the dealership. Lots and lots of little random things that add up to some serious numbers when you're not careful. Right now, at the time of recording this video, we're currently sitting around $2,000 for those miscellaneous expenses. So altogether, the cost of putting on this tour, which includes travel, accommodation, transport, merch, venue fees, business, and miscellaneous expenses, I'm spending $19,900. And after understating all of those figures throughout the video, it's definitely fair to assume that it's well and truly above the $20,000 mark. Putting on your own headlining tour is a big financial risk when you're in a band, and it's an even bigger financial risk as a solo artist where I'm the only person responsible for covering all of these expenses. Sad reality is that it didn't always used to be this way. Smaller bands self-managing their own tours used to be much more profitable. But now with how expensive everything is, along with what seems to be a global cost of living crisis forcing people to not even come to the shows in the first place, you know, being profitable off touring seems to be like a little bit of a miracle these days, especially as a small to mid-sized artist. To put it into perspective, you know, I'm not just spending money for the sake of spending money. I scrutinize and go through every single figure of every single expense that we do. I'm very particular about it. And even with that taken into consideration, you know, for us to simply break even on these shows, we would need to almost sell out every single show and sell out all of our merch. That's why, at least in my mind, it was worth spending a little bit more on things like travel and accommodation, not only for those quality of life improvements like I mentioned earlier in the video, but simply due to the fact that, you know, even if we did cheap out and everything, even if we, you know, drove 10 hours a day, didn't eat anything, slept on the floor at a friend's house, didn't tour with as many guitars, which results in a worse show, borrowed kits off our friends, even though, you know, my drummers never touched them before, it'd be like me playing another guitar. Of course, there's ways that you can save money, but, you know, even if we did do all of that, it still would have been really hard to break even. I don't tour to make money, not yet anyway. We clearly lose money every single time we leave our houses. This isn't just the case for small bands, you know, even all the mid-level bands that we both love and listen to every single day, especially if you're watching this channel. I know that they're finding it hard too because I've had conversations with them at the very shows that they're in the red for. Just like them, I tour because I love playing music. I love performing. I want people to not just watch, but experience the show. I want them to leave feeling entertained, and I want them to leave our show feeling inspired. If you come along to one of these shows, my hope and my intention is that you remember it for a very long time. I have no doubts about these shows being great. Whether there's 30 people or 200 people sold out every single night in those rooms, there are no doubts in my mind about the quality of show that will be on display. I am 100% confident that these shows will not only be fun for us on the stage, but for you guys who get to see it as well. We've spent a lot of time in planning these shows, and to have some of the best production that you can see for $30 in a 200 cap room. The time-coded lights, the fog machines, the way that the set moves and ebbs and flows, the way that the songs seamlessly blend into each other. I don't want people to come to the show and just watch us play the songs. You know, I want these shows to be something more. I want it to be an experience, and I can't wait for you guys to see that. Tickets, again, are available now, both in the description below and in the pinned comment. We'll be hitting up Brisbane on Friday, the 13th of June, Sydney on the 14th of June on the Saturday, and Melbourne on the 15th of June on the Sunday night. Come along, bring your friends. I'm not sure if we'll ever get to do this ever again. That rhymed. That wasn't intentional.